What if the entire story of human civilization, every war, every revolution, every technological leap, is nothing more than a carefully managed echo of an apocalypse that happened 13 million years ago? What if we are not the masters of our own destiny, but rather the genetic inheritance of a curse engineered by a rogue king of the oldest, most mysterious beings ever to visit Earth? Forget conventional archaeology. Today, we are digging past the superficial dust of Sumer and Egypt to confront the forbidden history of the Anunnaki. These weren't benevolent gods floating on clouds. The ancient tablets clearly describe them as powerful, highly advanced beings who descended from the heavens, specifically from the elusive planet Nibiru, with one primary, brutal goal: extracting Earth's gold. But their colonization was not merely about mining, it was about dominion. And the final chapter of their reign culminated in a devastating act of treason against their own cosmic laws, unleashing a 13,000-year curse, designed not to wipe out humanity physically, but to ensure its permanent, perpetual bondage. For millennia, this terrible truth has been shrouded in myth and deliberately obscured by forces that benefit from our ignorance. We are talking about a timeline so vast, it challenges our understanding of deep history. Scholars debate the timeline of the Great Flood a few thousand years ago, but that flood, it was just the cleanup crew. The real catastrophe, the true end of human sovereignty, occurred millions of years earlier, precipitated by the fatal ambition of the Final Anunnaki King. This king, whose name has been systematically erased from official cosmological records, committed an unforgivable violation, a cosmic crime involving genetic manipulation and the hijacking of planetary energy that enraged the higher Anunnaki Council. Their response was swift, total, and horrifyingly long-term. They didn't just leave, they hit the reset button, installing a slow-burn mechanism into our DNA and our collective reality. This curse isn't a ghost story. It's a quantifiable state of being. It explains the cycles of manufactured scarcity, the relentless pressure of engineered conflict, and why, despite our potential, humanity perpetually falls back into chaos and servitude. Every time we seem to be on the verge of true enlightenment, the 13,000-year curse snaps us back, ensuring we remain focused on petty survival rather than reclaiming our forgotten origins. This isn't just about ancient history, it is about recognizing the chains you wear right now. The Anunnaki programmed us for failure, and we've been running the loop ever since the final king's reign of terror ended everything. In this video, we are going to expose the hidden archives, pull back the veil on the cuneiform tablets that describe this spiritual erasure, and most importantly, identify the precise mechanism of control that keeps this curse active today. Get ready, because the moment you understand who ended humanity, you begin to understand how to restart it. We're about to dive deep into the Sumerian king lists and the forbidden lore of Nibiru to name the king, identify his crime, and reveal the physical location of the technology he buried. But before we unveil the descent of the Anunnaki and their reason for landing on this pale blue dot, we need to pause for one crucial second. This journey into forbidden knowledge is not easy, and the algorithms of control actively try to suppress content that challenges the official narrative. If this introduction alone has shifted your perspective on history, do me a favor right now. Smash that like button. Seriously, hitting like sends a signal to the powers that be that we demand this truth, and it helps this video break through the noise. More importantly, I need to know your immediate reaction to this concept of a 13-million-year curse. Have you felt that strange, cyclical pattern in history? Drop a comment below right now and tell me, what do you think is the single biggest sign that humanity is operating under a form of engineered control? Your thoughts fuel this research. And if you want to ensure you don't miss the reveal of the final king and the secrets buried in the Sumerian deep, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. We are breaking the curse together, and that starts with immediate engagement. Now, let's go back 450,000 years to the moment the Anunnaki first descended. We left off 450,000 years ago, staring up at the darkening sky, waiting for the descent. The official narrative tells us that early man was a simple hunter-gatherer, slowly chipping away at flint. But the forbidden history preserved on the oldest tablets, those clay records that predate even the pyramids, describes a very different scenario. It describes the arrival of the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, landing in the waters of the Persian Gulf and establishing their first command center, Eridu. Their mission was singular and devastatingly clear. They needed gold, not for decoration, but for atmospheric remediation on their dying homeworld, Nibiru. This requirement set the stage for all subsequent human history. The Anunnaki were not merely visitors. They were overseers, establishing an interstellar colony dedicated to resource extraction. The early days of Anunnaki rule, often romanticized as the Golden Age in mythologies, were anything but egalitarian. The king lists, meticulously preserved by Sumerian scribes, don't just list names, they list reigns that stretched for thousands of years. We are talking about true, long-lived sovereigns, genetic rulers far removed from our ephemeral existence. These kings, Enki, Enlil, Ningishzida, were the original architects of civilization, designing cities like Shurupak and using advanced technology, often misinterpreted as magic, to manage the massive mining operations. But inherent in this structure was the lineage problem. The power was concentrated in the hands of a few immortal-like beings, leading to intense rivalry and deep generational resentment between the dominant bloodlines, particularly those descended from Enlil and Enki. Think of it as a celestial family feud, but one with the power to shatter planets. This infighting, this corrosive internal conflict among the gods, was the true powder keg that eventually detonated the 13,000-year curse. Initially, humanity was an afterthought. We were created, the Lulu, the primitive worker, through genetic manipulation, blending Anunnaki DNA with early hominid stock, specifically for labor in the gold mines. This was the Golden Era. The creation of the human race was an emergency measure, a substitution for the tiring labor of the lower-ranking Anunnaki troops. But this creation came with a fatal flaw, one engineered by the very beings who made us. Our design was flawed to prevent us from ever achieving the true longevity and cosmic awareness of our creators. We were built with a self-destruct mechanism, a biological clock that ticked much faster than theirs, ensuring we remained disposable and compliant. This inherent, genetically coded obsolescence is the earliest precursor to the curse. The shift happened when one of these rulers decided to push the boundaries past the agreed-upon cosmic mandate. The stage was set not by the well-known figures like Marduk or Ninurta, but by a later, perhaps more desperate sovereign, the one we call the final sovereign. This king, whose records were deliberately fragmented and scattered, likely reigned in the period just before the catastrophic reset. His ambition wasn't just to rule Earth, it was to permanently usurp the authority of the Nibiru Council. He wasn't content with just gold. He sought to weaponize the planet's latent energy grid, or even more dangerously, refine the human genetic template to create a permanent, subservient army loyal only to him. This act was the catalyst, a cosmic violation. He crossed the line from resource manager to megalomaniacal dictator, tampering with universal laws that the higher Anunnaki were sworn to uphold. The specific crime remains one of the most guarded secrets. Was it the reckless use of the Mi'is, the objects of divine power and knowledge described in the myths, Was it opening a gateway that should have remained sealed? We believe it involved activating the Earth's natural frequency in a way that interfered with cosmic communication, essentially trying to cut Earth off from Nibiru permanently, establishing an independent empire. This betrayal led directly to the ultimate judgment, the divine retreat. The higher council looked upon the Earth and saw not a valuable mining outpost, but a contaminated petri dish led by a mad king. The decision was made to withdraw their forces, leave the rogue king to his fate, and critically ensure that his experiment, humanity, could never pose a threat again. This is where the true terror begins, because the punishment wasn't physical, though physical disasters followed. The higher Anunnaki and launched the curse. The 13,000-year curse was a spiritual and genetic erasure, designed to block human memory of the true cosmic events, limit our electromagnetic connection to the universe, and enforce a perpetual cycle of ignorance and conflict. Imagine a firewall placed directly over the human collective consciousness, ensuring that every few thousand years civilization collapses, information is lost, and we start over, fighting the same small, cyclical battles. This king was not just punished, his legacy was quarantined, and we, his creations, became the biological prison for his failure. If you think ancient history is just coincidence, type the final sovereign in the comments now. This programmed forgetfulness is crucial. It's why we struggle to remember the most important things and why we are so easily manipulated by manufactured reality. The tablets hint at it. The Sumerian and Babylonian texts, like the Epic of Atrahasis, talk about the ending. People fixate on the flood as a symptom. But what if the flood was merely the geographical cleanup? The real curse, the real ending, was the removal of our innate wisdom and the enforcement of this 13-million-year loop. This king's fatal technology, the very device used for the violation, wasn't destroyed. It was neutralized and hidden. This is the forgotten knowledge, a device or archive buried deep, possibly in the shifting sands of the Persian Gulf or beneath the Antarctic ice, waiting for the cycle to end or for humanity to evolve enough to accidentally rediscover it. The discovery of this archive would not only confirm the curse, but might hold the key to breaking it. This king's failure became our eternal cage. The concept of a 13-million-year-long quarantine on human potential is unsettling, but what is truly chilling is recognizing the sophistication of the deeper conspiracy. The Anunnaki didn't just walk away and hope for the best. They engineered failure into the system. If the Final Anunnaki King's crime was trying to sever Earth from Nibiru and establish an independent dominion using modified human labor, the countermeasure had to be foolproof. The higher council ensured that everything built on Earth, from our foundational myths to our economic structures, would be intrinsically unstable, perpetually cycling between temporary golden ages and devastating collapses. Think about the sheer impossibility of lasting peace. Why do highly advanced civilizations consistently descend into self-destruction, engineered scarcity, and pointless wars? The answer, according to the forbidden law surrounding the curse, is programming. Humanity was given the tools of consciousness and creativity, but simultaneously encoded with a self-sabotaging impulse, a genetic memory loop of violence and fear. This ensures we expend all our energy fighting each other for resources that are intentionally made scarce, rather than looking up and questioning the system itself. The curse is designed to prevent us from achieving the level of collective consciousness required to challenge the initial Anunnaki mandate. We are, essentially, living in a closed-loop simulation designed to run its course until a predestined conclusion. This engineered state is why we see the same tyrannical patterns repeat across empires, from Babylon to Rome, right up to the modern era. Let's ground this in our reality. in the here and now, which is the most terrifying part of this ancient curse. How does the 13,000-year curse manifest in our daily lives? Look at the financial chains, the relentless pursuit of growth, the endless debt cycles, the manufactured inflation, and the banking systems that create wealth out of thin air. These are not accidental flaws of capitalism. They are structural implementations designed to keep humanity focused on material survival. Remember, the Anunnaki came for gold. Their descendants or proxies ensure that this obsession with control over scarce resources, gold, oil, currency, remains the central organizing principle of human society. If the final king tried to seize control of Earth's wealth, the curse ensures that wealth itself becomes the ultimate tool of control over the masses, perpetually pitting us against one another in a frantic, losing race. This system makes us voluntarily serve the goals of the original extraction mission, even if the original masters are gone. We are literally mining gold for the shadows of the past. But who is managing the system now? This leads us to the explosive theory of the Shu elite bloodlines. Mythology is rife with tales of demigods and powerful families claiming direct descent from the Anunnaki. If the curse was a spiritual and genetic restriction on the masses, it logically follows that the higher Anunnaki bloodlines, those loyal to the council and not the rogue king, would have been preserved, acting as planetary managers. These families, often hidden behind the curtains of global finance, royalty, and secret societies, possess a degree of genetic clarity and access to the forgotten knowledge. They don't necessarily need to know they are serving a 13-million-year-old mandate. They simply operate the mechanisms of control, war, debt, and engineered crises, because that is the encoded behavior of their lineage. They perpetuate the conflict cycles, keeping the collective consciousness fragmented, thereby fulfilling the curse's core directive. Keep humanity weak and distracted. The ultimate question tied to the curse is timing. Why 13,000 years? This long cycle implies a waiting period. The ancient texts, particularly the cryptic fragments related to Nibiru's orbit, suggest that the curse is not permanent, but a temporary lock. It is designed to keep humanity subdued until the next inevitable return of Nibiru. This brings us to the potential for the Anunnaki's return. If their homeworld is on a long elliptical orbit, the conditions on Earth must be favorable for their return and potential repopulation or final extraction. The curse ensures two things for their potential reappearance. A, humanity won't be advanced enough to resist, and B, the planet's resources, especially the buried gold, will be ripe for the taking. We are merely placeholders, tending the garden until the owners come back to harvest. Think about that. Everything you believe about free will might just be a slow-motion countdown to the next celestial visitation. If you are just realizing the depth of this engineered reality, the most important question is, can we stop it? Is there a path to breaking the cycle? The only way out of a genetically programmed curse is through conscious evolution and the recovery of the forgotten knowledge, the king's buried secret. This requires humanity to transcend the engineered divisions of race, politics, and economics and achieve a singularity of purpose. The moment we collectively look past the financial chains and demand to know the truth of our origins, the genetic firewall, the curse, begins to crumble. It is a war waged not with weapons, but with awareness. We must collectively agree to stop serving the obsolete goals of the Anunnaki and reclaim our sovereignty. This is the true great work, hidden in plain sight. This theory radically alters our perception of history. If we are just living in a 13-million-year loop, who are the true controllers, and what happens when the clock finally runs down? Before we move to the final shocking cliffhanger, I want you to confront this engineered reality. If the Anunnaki bloodlines are running the show, what modern institution do you think is the most clearly compromised? Is it finance, media, or governance? Comment below with the phrase, "I see the chains," and tell me which sector you believe is ground zero for the deeper conspiracy. Let us know what you are truly seeing. Battlefield. If the 13,000-year curse is a real phenomenon, an enforced state of ignorance designed to maintain human servitude until the Anunnakis return, then the most critical task is to identify the precise mechanisms of control still active today. We've established the why, the rogue ambition of the Final Anunnaki King, and the Nibiru Council's subsequent quarantine. Now we must dissect the how. This isn't just theory. It's observational analysis of reality, seen through the lens of ancient forbidden knowledge. We mentioned the financial chains, but that is merely the visible layer of control. The deeper structure of the curse resides in the manipulation of two core human elements, memory and energy. The Anunnaki are described in the texts as masters of sophisticated psychotechnology, systems capable of influencing collective thought patterns across vast distances. The curse acts like a software patch installed directly into the human collective consciousness, ensuring that every few thousand years, humanity suffers a cultural amnesia. This amnesia is strategic. It wipes the record clean of true cosmic events, technological advancements achieved just prior to collapse, and the identities of the true manipulators. This is why every major ancient culture, the Mayans, the Egyptians, the Indus Valley, seems to have emerged fully formed, only to mysteriously decline. They weren't just declining, they were being reset by the curse's cyclical activation. Consider the obsession with time. Why is human civilization so rigidly bound by calendars, clocks, and deadlines? The Sumerian obsession with astronomical precision, which we inherited, was not solely for celestial navigation. It was a time-keeping mechanism for the Anunnaki's orbit. But the curse twisted this concept. It forced humanity into a linear, scarcity-driven perception of time, ensuring we always feel like we're running out of it. This creates perpetual stress and prevents the higher brain functions necessary for spiritual and technological breakthrough. This is a subtle but devastating side effect of the 13,000-year curse. We are trapped in a low-frequency state, constantly reacting to manufactured emergencies rather than creating a stable, high-frequency future. This low-frequency state is constantly maintained by modern proxies of the elite bloodlines. If you accept that certain families or groups hold keys to the forgotten knowledge and operate outside the parameters of the curse, their goal is simple: maintain the low frequency. They achieve this through control of information and, critically, through the engineering of constant conflict. Think of the modern geopolitical landscape. Why do wars never truly end? Why is there always an external enemy, a scarcity crisis, or a pandemic just around the corner? These events are meticulously managed chaos, designed to dump emotional and psychic energy into the planetary grid. This negative energy acts as the primary fuel source that keeps the curse's genetic firewalls strong. It's an energetic cage. Every time we engage in fear, anger, or division, we are unknowingly feeding the system established by the Final Anunnaki King's failure. Now let's circle back to the forgotten knowledge. We hypothesize it's a buried archive or machine. What exactly is hidden? The texts suggest it is the key to manipulating the me's, the advanced technological objects that allowed the Anunnaki soon to control gravity, modify the climate, and perform genetic engineering. This technology is likely localized and guarded fiercely. If this device were recovered by the general population, it would allow us to override the curse's parameters, instantly unlocking our full genetic and spiritual potential. This is why the control systems dedicate massive resources to archaeology, deep-sea exploration, and space surveillance, not just to find new resources, but to ensure this knowledge remains buried under layers of historical misinformation and physical barriers. The current push towards space colonization by modern corporations could even be a continuation of the original Anunnaki mandate, ensuring that if humanity does break the curse, the elite bloodlines still control the high ground. The gravity of this situation demands action, not apathy. The only resistance to a 13-million-year-old control system is the pursuit of absolute, unadulterated truth. If we are to achieve breaking the cycle, we must reverse the spiritual amnesia forced upon us. This means rigorously questioning every historical narrative, every financial norm, and every source of manufactured fear. We must use our modern interconnectedness, the very tool that briefly promised freedom before the proxies learned to weaponize it, to share this counter-knowledge. The mere awareness that the constraints we feel are artificial is the first crack in the system. Before we discuss the final implications and the approaching end date of this ancient cycle, I want to hear your critical thinking on this mechanism. If the goal is to maintain a low-frequency state, what specific modern technology or mass medium do you think is the most effective tool used by the elite bloodlines to enforce this control? Name a platform, a narrative, or an industry. Let's expose the current iteration of the curse. Drop the phrase low-frequency trap in the comments and tell us where you see the Anunnaki legacy most actively controlling human thought today. We have traced the terrifying line from the arrival of the Anunnaki King to the ultimate betrayal by the Final Anunnaki King, resulting in the engineered societal decay of the 13,000-year curse. We've seen how the financial chains and the orchestration of chaos maintain a low-frequency trap to prevent human enlightenment, but the deepest, most subtle mechanism of this curse is the deliberate distortion of what we call spirituality and religion. This is where the true genius of the ancient manipulation lies. The Anunnaki were not spiritual beings in the sense we understand it. They were advanced scientists and hyper-materialist overlords. Their power relied on technology and their longevity, not divine grace. However, when the curse was launched, the remaining loyalists, the elite bloodlines, needed a way to manage the spiritual void left by the departure of the higher beings. They couldn't simply let humanity descend into pure nihilism because total chaos would destroy the resources they were guarding. The solution was brilliant. They institutionalized the memory of the Anunnaki descent, deliberately warping cosmic truth into control mechanisms. Every major organized religion, when stripped down to its foundational myths, carries echoes of the Anunnaki presence. The celestial fathers, the creation of man from clay, the war in heaven, and the great flood. These stories are not just historical memories. They are highly edited, psychologically potent narratives designed to channel human spiritual impulse into predictable, manageable pathways. The key word here is intermediary. The curse ensured that humanity would forever need an intermediary, a priest, a messiah, a ruler, to connect with the divine, effectively blocking direct, unmediated communication with the cosmic source. This reliance on an external authority figure keeps the human spirit subservient and prevents the collective awakening that would break the curse. Consider the obsession with obedience and punishment. The fear of an angry, distant God, ready to wipe out humanity again, a clear psychological echo of the Great Flood cleanup, maintains a pervasive societal guilt. This guilt prevents the free flow of creative, expansive energy, the very energy required for breaking the cycle. This spiritual engineering is the strongest lock on the 13,000-year curse, Awom. The Anunnaki didn't need to destroy the concept of God. They just needed to place themselves, or their human proxies, permanently between man and the true divine flow. Furthermore, the curse is deeply linked to the control of esoteric knowledge, the disease, forgotten knowledge. We discussed earlier wasn't just physical technology, it was the original, uncorrupted understanding of the universe, the knowledge of sound vibration, energy grids, and the multidimensional nature of consciousness. This true knowledge was either buried or preserved only in highly guarded secret societies controlled by the elite bloodlines. Or they established initiatory orders that promised enlightenment, but served only to vet potential resistors and channel true seekers away from the core truth. The curse thrives on the fact that those who seek the deepest truths are often marginalized, mocked, or steered into false flags and dead ends. The ultimate irony is that many powerful occult groups today, believing they wield ancient power, are simply fulfilling a secondary subroutine of the Anunnaki One Control program. The complexity of the curse reveals that the final Anunnaki King's failure was ultimately about controlling creation. If the king tried to make humans better slaves, the resulting quarantine ensured humans became spiritual orphans, desperately seeking guidance from systems designed to mislead them. This spiritual trauma is what manifests today as deep-seated societal anxiety and the inability to trust inherent human goodness or intuition. We are constantly seeking external validation, from media, from leaders, from institutions, because the curse genetically impaired our ability to trust our inner voice, which is the direct link to higher consciousness and the antidote to the low-frequency trap. We are now approaching the most volatile phase of this ancient mandate, the potential convergence of Nibiru's orbit and the expiration date of the curse itself. The ancient calendar cycles indicate an impending major transition. This is why the control systems seem to be tightening their grip globally, why the chaos is escalating. The chill elite bloodlines know the timetable, and they are ensuring that when the Anunnaki's return happens, humanity will be fully pacified, distracted by artificial conflicts, and too spiritually weak to interfere with the harvest. Understanding the spiritual architecture of the curse is the first step toward breaking the cycle. This is heavy material, and it challenges everything we've been taught. If you are tracking with me on this analysis of spiritual engineering, I want you to share your thoughts. If religion and spirituality were weaponized by the Anunnakis and proxies, what is the single most powerful tool we have to reclaim true, unmediated spiritual sovereignty? Do you believe it is meditation, shared knowledge, or something else entirely? Comment below with the phrase, "spiritual orphan no more," and let's discuss the genuine resistance. In base of the intensifying chaos we observe globally, the rapid shifts in geopolitics, the economic volatility, the engineered social divisions, are all indicators that the clock on the 13,000-year curse is winding down. We are entering the endgame, a period where the controlling forces, the elite bloodlines and their proxies, are making their final desperate moves to solidify control before the Anunnakis return. This convergence of time is the most perilous moment for human sovereignty. To truly understand this endgame, we must address the nature of the curse's lock. We've established that the curse is a genetic and spiritual firewall. But ancient cuneiform fragments, particularly those detailing the specific ordinances laid down by the Nibiru Council after the failure of the Final Anunnaki King, suggest that the curse's efficacy is tied to the planetary energy grid. When the rogue king committed his cosmic violation, he likely sought to control Earth's natural energetic fields, the ley lines, to empower his new human army and communicate with deep space without Nibiru's permission. The curse, therefore, acted to dampen these fields, making them unusable for high-level consciousness expansion or free energy. Now, as the Anunnaki's return approaches, the elite bloodlines with Zecharia are focused on two major projects related to this energy grid. First, ensuring that any residual knowledge or technology related to free energy remains suppressed, the ongoing legacy of the forgotten knowledge. And second, installing a new artificial energy matrix that can sustain their control, even if the curse's power begins to wane. This is the deeper conspiracy, manifesting in high-tech infrastructure projects. Consider the massive global push for interconnected digital networks, not just for communication, but for the tracking and control of human movement, finance, and even health metrics. This dense, low-frequency digital environment acts as a secondary layer of the curse, replacing the original genetically enforced spiritual block with a technological one. If the original curse made us spiritual orphans, the modern iteration makes us technological slaves. This manufactured reality keeps humanity perpetually reliant on the very systems designed to manage us. This reliance ensures that our focus remains external, consuming the endless stream of engineered conflict and distraction, rather than turning inward to unlock the suppressed potential, the antidote to the curse in our own DNA. The greatest fear of the elite bloodlines is not revolution, it's mass, collective awakening through awareness of the engineered reality. The key to breaking the cycle, therefore, must involve reclaiming energy independence, both literally and spiritually. The knowledge suppressed about zero-point energy, atmospheric harnessing, and advanced vibration mechanics, the true MEs, is the path to physical sovereignty. Simultaneously, reclaiming spiritual sovereignty through meditation, conscious intention, and the rediscovery of our true, unmediated connection to the cosmic source is the path to genetic freedom. The curse cannot hold a population that is energetically self-sufficient and spiritually aware. The fragments also reveal a startling detail about the Final Anunnaki King. It is hypothesized that before his final retreat or capture, he managed to encode a fail-safe into the human genome, a potential key that could only be activated by specific vibrational frequencies or intense collective emotional alignment. This means the key to overriding the curse is within us. The king, in his final act of defiance against the higher Nibiru Council, may have left a time-delayed mechanism for ultimate liberation, which is why the forces of control work so hard to keep us perpetually divided and fearful. Unity and high-frequency love are literally the energetic antithesis of the curse. This brings us back to the Anunnaki's return. The prevailing theory among researchers studying these forbidden tablets is that Nibiru is due for a close passage within the next century or two, a period which marks the functional expiration of the 13,000-year mandate. The question is, will they return to find an enslaved, compliant population or a sovereign race that has already dismantled the quarantine? This is the ultimate race against time, framed by an ancient celestial war. The fight is on now, not in the distant past. It's a battle for your attention, your energy, and your perception of reality. If you recognize this desperate scramble for control in the current global climate, then you understand the severity of the endgame. If you think humanity can break the curse, I want you to comment right now. What is the single most powerful action we can take today to reclaim our energy and spiritual independence from the elite bloodlines and their programmed chaos? Use the phrase reclaim sovereignty and tell us your most powerful strategy. We've established the terrifying concept of the 13,000-year curse as a comprehensive system of control, engineered to keep humanity spiritually subdued until the prophesied Anunnaki's return. The focus now must shift from generalized control to the specific, tangible evidence of the forgotten knowledge and the technology that maintains the curse. Where exactly is the key to Breaking the cycle is hidden, and what is the nature of the device used by the Final Anunnaki King in his cosmic violation? The Sumerian king lists, fragmented as they are, offer cryptic clues. They speak of certain cities, particularly Eridu, the first established Anunnaki city, and Shurupak, known for its deep antediluvian libraries, holding tablets of destiny and devices of profound consequence that were swiftly buried or spirited away just before the Great Flood. The flood, as we established, was the final cleansing operation designed to wash away the physical evidence of the king's crimes and enforce the quarantine. The elite bloodlines, or the loyalist Anunnaki forces, would have been responsible for relocating this critical technology. Two primary locations surface repeatedly in the analysis of these obscure texts. The first is the highly volatile, constantly shifting sands and waters of the Persian Gulf, specifically the area near the ancient confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates, where Eridu once stood. This location is plausible because of the immense geological activity that occurred during the flood event, which would have buried vast amounts of technology deep beneath silt and water, making it virtually unreachable through conventional archaeology. The second and far more provocative location is Antarctica. Why Antarctica? The ancient maps, particularly the Piri Reis map and others, suggesting advanced geographical knowledge of Earth's land masses before the Ice Ages, hint at a period when Antarctica was temperate. If the Anunnaki had established outposts for resource extraction or monitoring on a temperate continent millions of years ago, a massive cataclysmic geological shift, perhaps linked to the king's abuse of planetary energy, could have rapidly encased an entire facility in ice. This scenario presents the perfect, naturally occurring vault for the preservation of the forgotten knowledge, a stasis field of ice protecting the technology of the final Anunnaki King. The increased modern focus on scientific activity in Antarctica, far beyond conventional climate research, raises significant questions about what global powers might be searching for beneath the ice. This hidden technology, the device of cosmic violation, is not merely a supercomputer. Based on the mythological descriptions of the MEs and the nature of the curse, a spiritual genetic firewall, the device must be a form of consciousness amplifier or a reality modulator. It would be capable of interfacing with the human genome and the Earth's Schumann resonance, allowing the king to broadcast a command that essentially limited human perception and disconnected us from our higher dimensional awareness. The key to breaking the cycle lies in understanding this device, because reversing the curse requires inputting the opposite command, a message of unity and sovereignty. The elite bloodlines understand that physical access to this forgotten knowledge is dangerous, but what is even more critical for them to control is the idea of it. They maintain the deeper conspiracy by creating false narratives around archaeological discoveries, attributing advanced building techniques to primitive cultures, and suppressing any findings that predate the accepted timeline of civilization. The modern narrative is a carefully constructed lie designed to convince us that humanity has always been primitive, ensuring we never look back 13 million years. If the technology is real and its location is one of these two sites, the Persian Gulf or Antarctica, then the global military and financial maneuvering in these regions must be viewed through the lens of this cosmic struggle. The control over resources, the establishment of military bases in extreme environments, and the funding of certain deep-sea exploration projects might not be about conventional politics. They could be the secretive, ongoing efforts to maintain the quarantine and protect the secrets of the final Anunnaki King from public discovery. They are guarding the key to their own obsolescence. The knowledge itself, The true, original Sumerian wisdom that wasn't corrupted by the curse speaks of humanity's true inheritance, a capacity for multidimensional travel, telepathy, and instantaneous creation. This inheritance was locked away by the curse. Breaking the cycle means reclaiming this inherent birthright, and that process begins with rigorous, independent investigation into the forbidden zones of the world. We need to hear your informed speculation on this crucial geographical aspect. If a rogue Anunnaki device capable of ending the curse is hidden, which location is the most strategically brilliant hiding spot? The deep, unstable silt of the Persian Gulf, or the timeless, impenetrable ice of Antarctica? Engage with this crucial element of the mystery. Comment below using the phrase, "the hidden vault," and tell us where you think the forgotten knowledge waits. We've exposed the location where the forgotten knowledge likely rests, the Persian Gulf or Antarctica. And we understand that this technology is a consciousness modulator, the ultimate tool of control left by the ambition of the Final Anunnaki King. Now we must shift our focus to the core legal and cosmic foundation of the 13,000-year curse, the cosmic violation itself. This was not a random act of tyranny. It was a precise breach of interstellar protocol that triggered the divine retaliation. The Anunnaki were not free agents. They were part of a vast, hierarchical cosmic order ruled by the laws of Nibiru. Their primary mandate was resource extraction, but they were strictly forbidden from permanently altering the evolutionary path of a host planet's indigenous life beyond necessary genetic modifications for labor. This rule was in place to prevent the very kind of power grab attempted by the rogue king. His crime was therefore twofold: an act of genetic hubris and a political coup against the Nibiran High Council, often referenced in later myths as the War in Heaven. The specific nature of the catalyst, a cosmic violation, lies in the human genome itself. The earlier loyalist Anunnaki, like Enki, had initially modified Homo erectus to create the Lulu, primitive man, as a temporary workforce. This initial template included a limited lifespan and a spiritual dimmer switch. The final Anunnaki king, however, sought to permanently elevate his creation, not to freedom, but to create a species capable of wielding some of the me technology under his sole command. He attempted to override the spiritual dimmer switch, giving his human slaves dangerous, albeit incomplete, access to higher cognitive functions, specifically those related to planetary energy manipulation. This was a direct violation because it risked destabilizing the Earth-Nibiru relationship and creating a competing intergalactic power base. The fragments of the Sumerian text, specifically the texts detailing the Council of the Gods, describe the horror of the higher Anunnaki when they realized the king had tampered with the core human template, creating a Frankenstein's monster capable of immense destruction, yet still emotionally and spiritually unstable. The response was the divine retreat and the immediate launch of the curse. The curse was the surgical countermeasure. It didn't just put the dimmer switch back on, it fused it shut. It introduced a deep, irrational fear of unity and a drive towards self-destruction, ensuring that even if humanity stumbled upon advanced technology, we would use it against ourselves, thus enforcing the quarantine from within. This is the psychological reality of the curse. The constant fear of the other, the manufactured tribalism, and the instantaneous breakdown of collective endeavors. It's not accidental. It's the engineered self-sabotage mechanism installed 13 million years ago. The goal was to render the king's modified human army completely useless to him, and by extension to any future resistance movements. Furthermore, the king's violation included the attempted theft and weaponization of a critical piece of Anunnaki technology, a device possibly capable of bending space-time or creating localized energy fields. This technology was crucial to the Nibiru hierarchy for maintaining intergalactic communication and travel. The fact that the king used it to anchor his rogue empire on Earth made the planet a quarantined zone. When the higher forces enacted the curse, they didn't just abandon the planet, they installed watchmen, the elite bloodlines, to ensure that the quarantined species remained incapable of repairing the technology or even understanding the true extent of the king's ambition. This deep dive into the cosmic violation shows us that the battle is inherently one of perception and unity. Breaking the cycle requires not just finding the forgotten knowledge, but healing the trauma of the king's failed genetic coup. We must consciously choose unity over division, awareness over distraction, thereby overriding the core programming of the curse. The question remains, who was the final Anunnaki king? While his name was largely erased or attributed to lesser localized deities to confuse future historians, the records point to a powerful figure from the lineage of Enlil, or perhaps more likely, a fiercely independent and technologically gifted descendant of Enki, who sought to establish his own spiritual cult and technological empire on Earth. His ambition was the original sin that cursed us all. If this analysis of the cosmic crime resonates with you, I want you to consider the most critical aspect of the curse's effect: the inability for humans to achieve sustained peace. Do you believe this is entirely natural evolution, or is it evidence of the engineered self-sabotage installed by the curse? Let's focus on the programming. Comment below with the phrase, "Programmed to fail," and share your thoughts on the greatest current division that you believe prevents human unity and, consequently, breaking the cycle. The sheer scale of the final Anunnaki King's ambition, his attempt to weaponize the human genome and seize control of Earth's energy grid, demanded an equally vast and devastating response from the Nibiru High Council. This response was the divine retreat, an event far more significant than a mere withdrawal. It was a cosmic declaration of war against the rogue king and a permanent quarantine order for the planet Earth. The concept of the divine retreat is critical to understanding the mechanism of the 3,000-year curse. When the loyalist Anunnaki forces abandoned Earth, they didn't just pack their bags. They systematically dismantled or neutralized the most powerful technologies that could have been used by the rogue king or his modified humans. This was a technological scorched earth policy. The ancient texts describe this period as a time of immense despair and fear, not because of a natural disaster, but because the source of advanced power and order suddenly vanished, leaving only chaos and the remnants of the king's doomed rebellion. During the divine retreat, certain key artifacts, the high-level Mies, were taken off-world, ensuring that future generations could not replicate the advanced technology necessary for intergalactic travel or defense. However, the technology of the curse itself, the modulation device used by the king and the counter-curse mechanisms, had to remain on Earth to maintain the quarantine. This explains the two core missions of the loyalist factions during the retreat: the burial of the forgotten knowledge, the king's main device, which we hypothesized is in the Persian Gulf or Antarctica, and the installation of the elite bloodlines as caretakers. These caretakers were not necessarily pure-blooded Anunnaki left behind. They were likely highly indoctrinated human Anunnaki hybrids or loyal subordinates chosen for their strategic position and genetic purity, tasked with executing the terms of the quarantine. Their mission was to ensure that humanity, the dangerous byproduct of the king's catalyst, a cosmic violation, never achieved the technological or spiritual sophistication to challenge the returning Nibiran forces. This mandate is the foundation of the deeper conspiracy. The elite bloodlines are merely cosmic janitors, ensuring the quarantine remains airtight. The retreat also involved a spiritual component. The Loyalists worked to reinforce the genetic firewall, the 13,000-year curse, by creating the initial theological templates we discussed earlier. They instilled narratives of a distant, punishing God who demanded unquestioning obedience, perfectly masking their own withdrawal and the true nature of their advanced science. This was the final act of psychological warfare, turning a technological containment procedure into a permanent religious dogma of subservience. The sheer trauma of the divine retreat led to the immediate collapse of the advanced antediluvian civilizations, the true ending of humanity as a sovereign race. Without the Anunnaki technology managing the climate and energy grid, the Earth suffered catastrophic geophysical changes. The subsequent natural disasters, including the Great Flood, were merely the environmental consequences of the departure and the king's original violation. The Loyalists simply allowed nature to take its course, using the resulting cataclysm as the perfect cover to bury evidence and solidify the mental state of perpetual survival among the remaining human populations. This orchestrated collapse cemented the low-frequency trap. The few survivors, traumatized, illiterate, and stripped of advanced memory, became the raw material for the next phase of the curse. The cyclical rise and fall of empires, each one designed to expend its resources and intellectual capital before reaching a dangerous level of awareness. The key connection here is the continuity of power. The divine retreat was not an ending. It was a transition of power from the direct physical presence of the Anunnaki to the indirect structural control of the elite bloodlines. They inherited the technology and the mission to enforce the quarantine until the Anunnaki's return. The entire trajectory of human history since that retreat has been dictated by the agenda of these hidden managers who are simply running the 13,000-year curse script. To break this cycle, we must first recognize the sheer psychological impact of this abandonment. We are a species suffering from profound cosmic trauma, genetically encoded to fear the vastness of space and the potential of our own minds. This fear is the final greatest defense of the curse. Now let's focus on the human managers. If the elite bloodlines were put in charge during the Sitchin divine retreat, which current geopolitical event or resource struggle do you believe is the most obvious manifestation of them actively fulfilling their ancient mandate to maintain conflict and scarcity? Comment below using the phrase, "The mandate continues," and share your example of the most recent obvious sign of engineered control. And Dihidit is the cumulative effect of the final Anunnaki King's betrayal and the subsequent divine retreat led to the installation of the core containment procedure. The curse is launched. This moment, 13 million years ago, was the definitive end of humanity's potential and the start of our long, dark quarantine. We must be precise in defining this curse, as it is the very fabric of our current reality. As we've outlined, the 13,000-year curse was not about immediate physical annihilation. Physical annihilation is sloppy and inefficient. The goal was sophisticated long-term control. The curse is, at its essence, a self-sustaining, spiritual, and genetic erasure. This erasure had three critical components, all working in tandem to enforce perpetual servitude until the Anunnaki's return. First, the genetic firewall, a hardwired limit on human lifespan and cognitive function. This ensures that no individual lives long enough to synthesize vast amounts of historical or cosmic data, preventing the accumulation of intergenerational wisdom. It also ensures the average human brain only operates at a fraction of its true capacity, effectively blocking access to multidimensional awareness, the type of consciousness that could truly challenge the Anunnaki's technology. This firewall is why true breakthroughs in longevity and consciousness have been aggressively suppressed throughout history by the elite bloodlines. Second, the emotional and cognitive scarcity loop. This mechanism enforces the low-frequency trap. The curse instills a deep, persistent sense of lack of resources, lack of love, lack of time. This scarcity loop keeps humanity in a constant state of fear, anxiety, and competition. Fear and conflict are low-frequency states, and crucially, they are massive energy generators. This negative psychic energy acts as a constant broadcast signal, reinforcing the quarantine system and providing a continuous energy source for the remnants of the king's device, perhaps even broadcasting a signal back to Nibiru, confirming that Earth is safely under quarantine. Third, the amnesia cycle. This is the cultural reset button. Every few thousand years, when human civilization naturally begins to peak, a moment when enough intellectual momentum is gained to potentially break the eugenetic firewall, the curse triggers an internal collapse mechanism, often manifesting as devastating war, engineered pandemic, or societal upheaval that destroys libraries, knowledge bases, and advanced infrastructure. This ensures that the collective memory of the true past, the time before the curse, is systematically wiped clean, forcing subsequent generations to start from zero, perpetually chasing their own tails in the endless loop of the curse. This spiritual erasure explains why humans struggle so much with basic concepts of unity and unconditional love. These high-frequency emotions are the very antidote to the curse, and the control system actively works through media, politics, and consumerism to keep them marginalized, substituting them with transient material obsessions. The deeper conspiracy isn't about hiding secrets. It's about making us so distracted and emotionally depleted that we lose the desire to look for them. The launch of the curse was not a mythical event, it was a technological deployment. Imagine a planetary-scale sonic or electromagnetic pulse, calibrated precisely to tamper with the bio-holographic matrix of the human species. The loyalist forces, implementing the punishment for the Final Anunnaki King's a cosmic violation, flipped the switch. The result was the instantaneous transition of humanity from a burgeoning, if genetically limited, apprentice civilization to a state of programmed failure. The realization that our inherent flaws, our tribalism, our greed, our short lifespan, are engineered limitations, and not natural defects, is the first crucial step toward breaking the cycle. We are not broken, we are suppressed. The chains are genetic, but the key to unlocking them is consciousness. If the amnesia cycle is the most effective tool for maintaining the key 13,000-year curse, then its modern manifestation must be incredibly pervasive. I want you to identify the single biggest information or cultural source today that you believe is intentionally contributing to this historical amnesia or cognitive dissonance. Is it Hollywood, mainstream education, or mass media news? Comment below using the phrase amnesia protocol and pinpoint the biggest culprit in the spiritual erasure. Dummo. The claim that the 13,000-year curse is an active, self-sustaining, spiritual, and genetic erasure demands empirical support. We cannot rely solely on speculation. We must look to the physical evidence, the ancient records left behind before the amnesia cycle could fully take hold. This leads us deep into the libraries of clay, the ancient warnings, cuneiform evidence. The earliest, most intact records from Sumer and Babylon are not simply fairy tales. They are meticulous historical accounts, often recording events that span epochs far beyond accepted archaeological timelines. When these tablets are translated without the theological bias imposed by later curse-influenced cultures, they reveal direct testimony of the cosmic violation and the ensuing quarantine. We are talking about tablets like the Atrahasis and the Enuma Elish, which are usually simplified into creation myths, but actually function as highly coded legal and historical documents detailing the actions of the Anunnaki. In the Atrahasis epic, which is the Babylonian story of the Great Flood, the narrative spends significant time detailing the life before the disaster. It speaks of the hard labor of the Igigi, the lesser Anunnaki workers, leading to their revolt, necessitating the creation of humanity. But critically, the text also reveals the decision of the great gods, the High Council, to destroy mankind not because of mere noise or overpopulation, as commonly mistranslated, but because of a transgression linked to the burgeoning intelligence and ambition of the Lulu. This ambition was directly linked to the Final Anunnaki King's failed upgrade. The tablets record the Council's fear that humanity was becoming too much like them, too quickly, and demanding access to the forbidden technologies, the Mies, which the king had promised them. This narrative clearly supports the idea that the destruction was an intentional spiritual erasure, not just a physical cleansing. One passage, often ignored, details the reduction of the human lifespan. Before the flood, humans lived for thousands of years, a clear sign of their close genetic proximity to the Anunnaki. Post-flood, the Council decrees that the human lifespan must be drastically reduced, a direct institutionalization of the genetic firewall component of the curse. This passage is the undeniable cuneiform evidence of the curse being launched. The reduction in lifespan ensured the amnesia cycle would become permanent. Furthermore, the tablets that describe the transfer of power during the divine retreat detail the creation of an administrative hierarchy to manage the remaining population. These texts are the primary source for identifying the elite bloodlines. Families and individuals given divine favor and access to limited, low-level, forgotten knowledge, like architecture, mathematics and astronomy, to maintain civilization, but only within the rigid parameters of the curse. These administrative duties were veiled in religious ceremony and ritual, guaranteeing the loyalty of the caretakers through fear and manufactured prestige. The most chilling aspect of the cuneiform evidence is the pervasive sense of foreboding about the future. The scribes, often the highly educated elite, understood that they were recording a history marked by cyclical collapse. They encoded the knowledge in complex symbolic language, hoping that future generations, perhaps those closer to the end of the 13,000-year cursed cycle, would be able to decipher the truth. They provided the ancient warnings that the flood was merely a symptom, a dramatic environmental consequence used to facilitate the real ending, which was the removal of humanity's divine inheritance. To dismiss these records as mere mythological poetry is to fall victim to the curse's most successful component, historical distortion. When we read the Sumerian texts as legal reports and scientific records from a hyper-advanced civilization, the entire narrative shifts. They are not describing gods creating man, they are describing intergalactic engineers modifying a primate species, fighting a political war, and enforcing a planetary quarantine. If we are to achieve breaking the cycle, we must demand the open translation and uncorrupted study of these tablets. They hold the precise command code that was installed into the human psyche. By understanding the exact nature of the sounded cosmic violation, can reverse it. This evidence is physical proof of the engineered reality. If the lifespan reduction recorded in the tablets is the most compelling evidence of the curse, what other common mythological theme, like the Tower of Babel or Prometheus stealing fire, do you believe is a highly edited, distorted record of the Anunnaki's actions and the curse's enforcement? Comment below using the phrase tablet truth and share which myth you think holds the deepest secret. We have now established that the 13,000-year curse is a sophisticated, long-term spiritual and genetic quarantine, proven by the ancient warnings, cuneiform evidence, detailing the enforced reduction of the human lifespan. But no event is more frequently misunderstood or more successfully used by the curse's mechanisms of control than the Great Flood. It's time to recontextualize this global catastrophe not as the main event, but as the final cleanup operation. The flood as a symptom. The common narrative, woven through global myths from the Sumerian Atrahasis to the biblical Genesis, portrays the flood as divine punishment for human wickedness. This interpretation perfectly serves the curse's goal, to instill fear, submission, and a perpetual reliance on external divine authority. The truth, however, is far more mechanical and tragic. The flood was a massive geophysical consequence, triggered by two primary factors stemming from the Anunnaki conflict. First, the Final Anunnaki King's cosmic violation likely involved the reckless use of planetary energy, perhaps tampering with the magnetic poles or the subterranean water tables to fuel his rebellion. This action fundamentally destabilized Earth's delicate internal mechanisms. Second, the divine retreat compounded this instability. The loyalist Anunnaki utilized hyper-advanced technology to manage the Earth's climate and shield the planet from celestial interference. When they left, taking their MEES and climate control devices with them, the Earth was left exposed and destabilized, allowing the pre-existing tectonic and hydrological pressures to unleash their fury. Therefore, the Great Flood was not the cause of the curse. It was the inevitable environmental symptom of the Anunnaki civil war and the subsequent technological abandonment. The true purpose of the flood, from the perspective of the Nibiru High Council and the remaining elite bloodlines, was threefold. Firstly, it served as a perfect physical barrier to the king-forgotten knowledge. The king's most dangerous technology and archives, which we believe were located in the Persian Gulf region, were swiftly submerged, buried under miles of sediment and water, making their recovery exponentially difficult and ensuring the quarantine remained physically enforced. Secondly, the flood was the ultimate enforcer of the amnesia cycle. The overwhelming trauma, the loss of nearly all infrastructure, and the subsequent descent into survivalism utterly shattered the collective memory of the pre-flood world. The few who survived, like the biblical Noah or the Sumerian Utnapishtim, were precisely those individuals chosen and preserved by the loyalist Anunnaki. They were selected not for piety, but for genetic suitability to become the progenitors of the post-curse human race, conditioned to preach a narrative of obedience and fear. Thirdly, the flood solidified the psychological grip of the curse, the low-frequency trap. To survive such a catastrophe, humanity had to regress to a primal, fear-driven state focused solely on material reconstruction. This focus on rebuilding and resource scarcity became the backbone of all subsequent civilizations, diverting intellectual energy away from challenging the genetic firewall or questioning the authority of the gods who permitted such destruction. The flood, in this context, wasn't punishment. It was a highly effective geological cleanup operation designed to bury the curse's immediate evidence and mentally reset the species. Every time we hear the flood story told, it reinforces the deeply ingrained fear of environmental and cosmic retribution, a fear that keeps us compliant and looking outward for salvation rather than inward for sovereignty. The historical record also shows that after the flood, the new generation of rulers, the emerging elite bloodlines, systematically founded societies based on water control, grain management, and rigid hierarchy. This obsession with control over basic survival resources is a direct, observable legacy of the flood's trauma and the curse's mandate. They ensure that humanity remains preoccupied with the lowest rungs of Maslow's hierarchy, never ascending to the spiritual realization necessary for breaking the cycle. We must stop viewing the flood as a singular event of divine judgment and start viewing it as the strategic closure of the Anunnaki crisis. It was the moment the physical evidence was concealed and the psychological warfare began in earnest. The truth is much more frightening than a mythical flood. The trauma is encoded in our collective consciousness. If the flood was just the cleanup, then what do you believe is the modern slow-motion equivalent of the flood, the manufactured crisis designed by the elite bloodlines to enforce the amnesia cycle and maintain the low-frequency trap? Today, is it debt, information overload, or perpetual political polarization? Comment below using the phrase, "The Great Reset," and tell us what you think is the modern mechanism for wiping the collective slate clean. The successful orchestration of the flood, as a symptom, ensured the physical burial of the most dangerous element of the Final Anunnaki King's rebellion, the forgotten knowledge. This is not an abstract concept. It is the physical, technological key to overriding this 13,000-year curse. Understanding what this knowledge is and why it is fiercely guarded by the elite bloodlines is paramount to breaking the cycle. We are talking about technology that represents the cosmic violation itself. If the king's crime was tampering with human potential and planetary energy, the forgotten knowledge must be the mechanism for both. Based on the cryptic hints left in Sumerian and later Egyptian texts, this knowledge encompasses 3 domains that remain suppressed in our modern world: advanced cosmology, genetic sovereignty, and free energy. Firstly, advanced cosmology. The true understanding of Nibiru, the Planet, Anunnaki's home planet, and its complex orbital path. This knowledge would reveal the precise timing of the Anunnaki's return, and dismantle the religious narratives of divine mystery, replacing them with gravitational and astronomical physics. For the elite bloodlines, managing the quarantine, revealing this timeline would shatter their carefully constructed illusion of perpetual power. Secondly, genetic sovereignty. This is the scientific understanding of the human genome before the genetic firewall was installed by the curse. The tablets hint at the true nature of our DNA, a multi-strand biological antenna capable of interfacing with the cosmos and accessing all information instantaneously. The forgotten knowledge likely contains the precise frequency or chemical key to deactivate the lifespan limitations and cognitive suppressors placed by the curse. If humanity gains this sovereignty, the control system collapses instantly. This explains the modern obsession with tracking and controlling genetic information. The deeper conspiracy ensures that the cure remains locked away while the symptom, human frailty, is constantly managed. Thirdly, and perhaps most critically, free energy. The technology of the me's, which are described as objects of power and knowledge that allowed the Anunnaki to harness zero-point energy, manipulate gravity, and build structures that defy modern physics. This technology, if rediscovered, would instantly shatter the financial chains enforced by the elite bloodlines. The scarcity loop, the relentless need to toil for finite resources like oil, gas, or gold, is the engine of the curse. Free energy would render this scarcity obsolete, creating global abundance and eliminating the primary tool of human division and conflict, thereby undermining the low-frequency trap. The forgotten knowledge is fiercely protected because it represents the only credible threat to the continuation of the curse. This protection isn't passive. It's an active, ongoing mission. It involves black-budget operations focused on recovering and reverse engineering the technology for the exclusive use of the elite bloodlines. all while publicly ridiculing and suppressing any independent inventor or researcher who stumbles too close to the truth. Think of the historical fate of pioneering scientists who spoke about anti-gravity or scalar energy. They were often discredited, defunded, or mysteriously silenced. This is the hand of the curse's managers at work, ensuring the knowledge remains forgotten. The king's specific technology, the consciousness modulator, which we believe is buried, is the physical embodiment of all this knowledge. It is a control panel for planetary reality. Finding it and understanding its operation would allow humanity to issue the override command, cancelling the 13-million-year-old quarantine order. The global political and military tension around sites like the Persian Gulf and Antarctica suddenly makes chilling sense when viewed through the lens of this treasure hunt for cosmic liberation. If we want to initiate breaking the cycle, we must focus our collective intent on recovering or replicating the concept of free energy, as it directly attacks the scarcity programming of the curse. If you agree that free energy is the single most important step to dismantling the curse, comment "Energy Freedom Now" below. But before we move on to how the curse manifests in our political structures, let's consider one final powerful aspect of the part forgotten knowledge: its preservation. Do you think the Anunnaki loyalists intended for this knowledge to be permanently suppressed, or was it meant to be rediscovered by a future worthy humanity at the end of the cycle? Share your theory about the true intention behind the knowledge's burial. We have meticulously mapped the structure of the 13,000-year curse, confirming its origin in the final Anunnaki King's betrayal and its maintenance through the burial of the forgotten knowledge and the perpetual amnesia cycle. Now, we must synthesize these elements into the chilling reality of the deeper conspiracy, the undeniable connection between the ancient quarantine and the cyclical nature of human history. If the curse is a form of software designed to keep humanity in a low-frequency trap until the Anunnakis return, then historical analysis should reveal predictable patterns of engineered conflict and collapse. And that is precisely what we find when we look past the conventional history textbooks. Every major epoch of human civilization, from the rise of ancient Sumer and the Indus Valley, through the empires of Egypt, Rome, and the great Eastern dynasties, follows a disturbingly uniform arc, a rapid period of intellectual and technological growth, often sparked by rediscovering fragments of the key forgotten knowledge, followed by a sudden, devastating internal implosion driven by moral decay, manufactured war, or economic collapse. These collapses are often attributed to external factors, but the underlying rot is always internal division, the direct result of the curse's core programming. This cyclical collapse ensures that humanity, collectively, never graduates to the next level of consciousness. Just as we approach the capability to access free energy or spiritual sovereignty, the program executes a self-destruct command. This isn't random. It is the scheduled maintenance of the quarantine run by the elite bloodlines who manage the geopolitical theater. Consider the deliberate suppression of genius throughout history. Advanced concepts in mathematics, physics, and medicine, knowledge that could rapidly accelerate humanity's growth, are often confined to obscure academic silos, ridiculed or weaponized exclusively for the benefit of the ruling class. This controlled dissemination of information ensures that progress is slow, fragmented, and harmless to the Anunnaki and of mandate. The true purpose of the global education system, when viewed through the lens of the curse, is not illumination but managed ignorance, teaching the curriculum of the controlled reality. The deeper conspiracy extends into the very fabric of our social structure, the illusion of choice. We are given two sides of every argument: left versus right, east versus west, capitalism versus socialism. but both sides are ultimately managed by the same invisible hand, serving the same goal: perpetual friction. This constant polarization keeps the human collective mind focused on external conflict, preventing the necessary internal alignment required for breaking the cycle. This manufactured opposition is the purest manifestation of the curse's divide and conquer programming. The goal of this deeper conspiracy is simple: to ensure that when the Anunnaki's return finally occurs, they find a planet ripe for recommissioning, a world whose inhabitants are too busy fighting each other for manufactured scraps to look up and realize their true masters have returned. The elite bloodlines are preparing the planet for the harvest, ensuring the workforce is compliant and the resources are ready for extraction. The urgency of our time lies in the increasing velocity of these collapse cycles. The Industrial Revolution to the digital age happened much faster than previous transitions, suggesting that the pressure of the curse is increasing as the cycle nears its end. The global instabilities of the 21st century are not accidents, they are the final, desperate tremors of the 13,000-year curse, running its ultimate destructive subroutine. Recognizing the patterns of the deeper conspiracy is essential for true freedom. We must stop participating in the engineered cycles of collapse. Breaking the cycle requires a collective refusal to accept the premise of division and scarcity. If history is merely a series of engineered cycles, which major historical collapse, the fall of the Roman Empire, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, or perhaps the modern housing crisis, do you believe was the most crucial act of forced regression, specifically designed to enforce the amnesia cycle? Comment below using the phrase engineered collapse and identify the moment in history where the curse hit hardest. Dedilu. We have journeyed from the cosmic betrayal of the Final Anunnaki King to the realization that the deeper conspiracy is an active, cyclical historical control system. But the most vital question remains: how does the 13,000-year curse look today? How does this ancient mandate, rooted in Sumerian clay tablets and genetic manipulation, continue to suppress humanity in the age of global communication and high technology? The answer lies in the chilling present-day manifestation today, the financial chains. While we briefly touched upon the concept earlier, we must now dissect the modern global financial system as the most efficient and pervasive delivery mechanism for the curse's core programming. The Anunnaki came for gold. Their proxy descendants, the elite bloodlines, maintain control through an elaborate, global system of engineered debt and manufactured scarcity that keeps the vast majority of humanity trapped in the low-frequency trap of survival. The modern banking system, with its fractional reserve policies and creation of fiat currency, is a near-perfect operational model of the Anunnaki mandate. It creates wealth out of thin air, leveraging human labor and potential, ensuring that debt, not true value, is the primary global commodity. Debt, in this context, is not merely economic. It is a spiritual and energetic shackle. It forces individuals to dedicate their entire lives, their creative energy, their time, and their focus to serving an artificially imposed system, diverting attention away from breaking the cycle. This system enforces the genetic firewall by making long-term, visionary thinking virtually impossible for the average person. When you are constantly fighting inflation, job insecurity, and debt, your mental resources are trapped in the reptilian brain, focused only on short-term survival. This is the curse's programming at its most insidious, forcing us to voluntarily self-enforce the quarantine through economic anxiety. Consider the deliberate complexity of the financial world. Financial instruments, derivatives, and algorithmic trading are designed to be incomprehensible to the general public. This obscurity ensures that the mechanisms of control remain hidden behind a veil of expertise, managed exclusively by the proxy elite bloodlines, the modern priesthood of finance. They use manufactured crises, like the deliberate collapse of markets or the orchestration of inflation, to periodically reset the balance of wealth, transferring true value from the productive masses to the concentrated hands of the controllers, ensuring the financial chains are continuously reinforced. Furthermore, the obsession with gold and scarce resources remains central. Despite the digital age, gold retains its mythical power, an ancient echo of the Anunnaki's original mission. Conflicts over oil, minerals, and rare earth elements are not purely geopolitical. They are skirmishes managed by the elite bloodlines to maintain scarcity and division, thereby generating the negative emotional energy necessary to power the curse's planetary firewall. Every geopolitical conflict, every economic depression serves the ancient goal of resource management for the Anunnaki's return. The convergence of finance and technology in the 21st century, the push towards centralized digital currency and complete tracking of transactions, represents the final tightening of the curse's grip. This level of centralized control eliminates the last vestiges of individual economic freedom, completing the transition from a genetically enforced quarantine to a technologically enforced cage. If the forgotten knowledge is the key to free energy, the digital currency grid is the absolute antithesis, designed to lock down energy and labor exchanges entirely. To truly initiate breaking the cycle, the financial illusion must be exposed and dismantled. Sovereignty cannot be achieved when the vast majority of the population is in energetic and financial servitude. The chains are invisible, woven from debt and anxiety, but their origin is ancient and clear, the failed ambition of the Final Anunnaki King and the subsequent quarantine. If the financial chains indeed are the primary modern delivery system for the curse, what single financial concept? Is it compound interest, fiat currency, or the debt ceiling? Do you believe is the most potent tool used by the mentioned elite bloodlines to maintain the frequency trap? Comment below using the phrase "debt is the curse" and identify the financial weapon that controls us most effectively. BCE, we have meticulously dissected the modern mechanics of the 13,000-year curse, identifying the financial chains as the physical manifestation of the control. But who are the true administrators of this ancient mandate? Who are the current descendants of the loyalist factions left behind during the divine retreat? This brings us to the explosive and highly sensitive topic of the elite bloodlines. The concept is simple. If the curse is genetic, a biological firewall installed into the Lulu to limit our potential, then the managers of the quarantine must possess a superior, less compromised genetic code, the preserved Anunnaki DNA. These are not mythical creatures. They are generational families and individuals who occupy the highest echelons of global power, operating with an inherited mandate of control. The records, particularly those found in the fragmented accounts of the post-flood Sumerian priesthood and early Egyptian dynasties, detail specific lineages that were granted authority and limited access to the forgotten knowledge. Especially in mathematics, astronomy, and architectural secrets. These lineages were placed in charge of restarting civilization, always with the strict instruction to maintain the hierarchy and enforce the spiritual suppression. They became the first royal families, the original priesthoods, and the founders of secret societies. The preservation of the Anunnaki DNA ensures two things. First, these bloodlines retain a higher degree of cognitive function and longevity. allowing them to think in generational terms, something the cursed mass population with its limited lifespan cannot do. They manage the amnesia cycle. Because they themselves are not fully subjected to it, their generational memory remains intact. Second, their genetic profile allows them limited access to the older Anunnaki technology and the planetary energy grid. They are the only ones capable of tuning the frequency of the low frequency trap. Today, these elite bloodlines which are not necessarily identified by flashy titles or crowns, although many originated in European royalty, they operate subtly, dominating the critical sectors of global control: central banking, resource extraction, oil, minerals, water, pharmaceutical research, especially genetics and longevity, and the mass media industry. Their goal is not personal wealth, but the successful execution of the ancient mandate, keeping the planet stable enough for the Anunnaki's return, while ensuring human resistance remains impossible. The deeper conspiracy runs on the anonymity of these families. They perpetuate the illusion that control is exercised by visible politicians or corporate CEOs. But these public figures are merely mid-level managers. The true controllers operate behind foundations, offshore trusts, and highly exclusive intergenerational networks. They are the ones who orchestrate the engineered conflicts, manipulate the financial chains, and fund the suppression of technologies like free energy. The crucial detail is whether these modern members are knowingly fulfilling the ancient curse. Some segments of the elite bloodlines likely retain the full conscious memory of their Anunnaki ancestry and the quarantine mandate. They view humanity as livestock. Others might simply be operating on the behavioral programming inherited through their DNA, an intrinsic, unconscious drive to dominate, hoard, and maintain scarcity, fulfilling the will of the Cosmic Council without fully understanding the 13-million-year timeline. The fight for breaking the cycle T becomes a fight against an enemy that is both visible and invisible, both biological and economic. We must stop fighting the visible politicians and start exposing the invisible generational power structures that maintain the curse. If we can identify the true command centers of the elite bloodlines, we can disrupt the communication and operational structure of the quarantine. The identification of these bloodlines is highly controversial, but the patterns of incestuous marriage, control over key resources, and deep historical influence across multiple nations provide the necessary clues. They are the living embodiment of the divine retreat's final act, the appointment of the caretakers of the human prison. If the elite bloodlines are the primary enforcers of the curse, which major institution today, be it the World Economic Forum, the major central banks, or specific philanthropic foundations, do you believe acts as their most critical operational hub for maintaining the deeper conspiracy? Comment below with the phrase bloodline control and name the modern headquarters of the ancient quarantine. We have arrived at the terrifying intersection of ancient prophecy and imminent reality, the concept of the Anunnaki's return. This is the ultimate objective of the 13,000-year curse, the reason the elite bloodlines had managed the financial chains and enforce the low-frequency trap. The curse is not a random punishment. It is a meticulously managed planetary waiting room, ensuring Earth is compliant and ready for its original owners. The premise relies on the physics of Nibiru, the Anunnaki's homeworld. Ancient Sumerian astronomy describes Nibiru as a planetary body on a long elliptical orbit that brings it back into the inner solar system approximately every 3,600 years, according to some interpretations, or perhaps a far more significant multi-million-year orbit that truly influences major geophysical cycles. The 13,000-year curse implies a calculation tied to an orbital or cosmic alignment that signals the most favorable condition for the core Anunnaki civilization to return and reclaim its outpost. The question is not if they return, but when and what state they expect to find us in. The curse is designed to guarantee two scenarios upon their return. Scenario A, resource availability. The Anunnaki just left because of the chaos caused by the Final Anunnaki King and the subsequent divine retreat. The primary goal of their return is still resource extraction, specifically the gold they require for Nibiru's atmosphere. The curse, through the elite bloodlines and the deeper conspiracy, ensures that while humanity is kept busy fighting, the core resources remain protected or minimally utilized by the masses, ready for the masters to harvest. The continued obsession with gold accumulation by global institutions is a strong indicator of this preparation. Scenario B, lack of resistance. The curse must guarantee that humanity is in no position, spiritually or technologically, to resist the re-establishment of Anunnaki rule. The genetic firewall ensures our inability to access high-level, free energy technology, the very knowledge that could power a defense against an interstellar civilization. The amnesia cycle ensures we won't even remember why we should fight, instead viewing the returning Anunnaki as saviors, gods, or perhaps benevolent alien benefactors, arriving to solve the problems engineered by the curse itself. The current global escalation of disclosure and the persistent rumors of non-human intelligence interaction might be part of the final preparations. The elite bloodlines could be gradually acclimatizing the masses to the idea of extraterrestrial presence, softening the shock of the Anunnaki's return. By framing the event through popular culture and controlled media leaks, they manage the narrative, transforming cosmic overlords into misunderstood allies. The most chilling aspect is the timing. As we discussed, the intensity of the collapse cycles, the frequency of economic turmoil and engineered conflict is increasing, suggesting the final window for the curse is closing. The managers, the elite bloodlines, are in a state of high alert, accelerating the implementation of global control mechanisms like digital currencies and centralized monitoring to ensure total compliance when the time comes. They are trying to tighten the chains before the true masters arrive to inspect the planetary prison. The only way to preempt this scenario is through breaking the cycle. Now, we must achieve true human sovereignty, genetic, energetic, and spiritual, before the Anunnaki's return transition point. This requires a rapid, conscious deactivation of the low-frequency trap by massive collective awareness. If you believe the Anunnaki's return is imminent, you must recognize the urgency of this moment. The curse is a race against the calendar of Nibiru. Our only weapon is truth and unity. If the Anunnaki were to return tomorrow, what single engineered conflict or societal division created by the elite bloodlines do you think would be their most effective tool for pacifying and controlling the global population immediately upon arrival? Comment below using the phrase "the final harvest" and name the modern conflict designed to distract us at the critical moment. Udine, we have detailed the structure, the operators, and the impending deadline of the 13,000-year curse. The narrative of perpetual servitude enforced by the final Anunnaki King's failure and maintained by the Dia elite bloodlines for the Anunnaki's return is overwhelming. But this knowledge is not meant to paralyze us, it is meant to empower us. The central theme now becomes the actionable path forward, breaking the cycle and achieving true human sovereignty. If the curse is a self-sustaining system of control, then the key to breaking the cycle lies in understanding that the ultimate lock is internal. The chains are not made of metal, they are made of suppressed genetic memory and low-frequency emotional responses. The only way to override a 13-million-year-old program is to introduce a counter-program that runs at a higher frequency. The process of breaking the cycle requires three coordinated revolutions: genetic, energetic, and consciousness. The genetic revolution involves consciously overcoming the genetic firewall installed by the curse. This means rigorously cultivating states of mind that are the antithesis of the curse's programming: unity, deep compassion, and unconditional love. These high-frequency emotions naturally resonate with the uncorrupted aspects of the human genome. The very potential the Final Anunnaki King tried to access, and that the Nibiru Council suppressed, by consciously choosing unity over the engineered tribalism of the deeper conspiracy. We begin to bypass the programmed self-sabotage mechanisms. This is why the elite bloodlines had worked so hard to keep us polarized. Unity is the frequency that unlocks our original sovereign DNA template. The Brenergetic Revolution is the recovery and implementation of the by-forgotten knowledge regarding free energy. The curse thrives on the financial chains imposed by resource scarcity. If humanity collectively adopts technologies that draw energy directly from the zero-point field, the technology of the MEs, the entire global economic framework managed by the proxy bloodlines collapses. This isn't just about cheap power. It's about eliminating the necessity for toil and debt, freeing human creativity from the low-frequency trap, and allowing our focus to shift from mere survival to true cosmic exploration and advancement. Every small effort to support independent energy research or decentralized resource control is an act of war against the curse. The Palpinda consciousness revolution involves shattering the key amnesia cycle. We must actively seek out and synthesize the ancient warnings, cuneiform evidence, and all other suppressed history. The collective realization of the truth that we are not flawed biological accidents, but suppressed cosmic beings under quarantine, is the equivalent of a planetary-scale awareness event. This mass recognition of the engineered reality is the ultimate override command. The curse cannot survive if the majority of the population knows it is being run by a program. This is why information control and the manufacturing of consensus reality are the primary missions of the modern controllers. Breaking the cycle requires a transition from passive consumption of engineered reality to active creation of a sovereign future. This is the moment to stop fighting the symptoms, the political puppets, the economic downturns, and start attacking the root cause, the 13-million-year-old genetic instruction set. This liberation is not guaranteed. The elite bloodlines are aware of the potential for human awakening as the cycle ends, and they will redouble their efforts to maintain the quarantine. The current push for massive surveillance, digital control, and rapid societal change are desperate end-of-cycle measures designed to prevent the three revolutions from gaining critical mass. Our window for achieving sovereignty is closing, making collective, informed action absolutely necessary. This is the most crucial takeaway from this entire presentation. If we are to achieve true human sovereignty before the Anunnaki's return, we must act with urgency and focus. If you are committed to the consciousness revolution, I want to know your personal strategy. What one action are you going to take starting today? Is it disconnecting from mass media, rigorous historical research, or dedicating time to inner work to personally dismantle the low-frequency trap? Comment below using the phrase "sovereignty now" and share your plan for breaking the cycle. We have reached the end of the line, the synthesis of the forbidden truth. We've exposed the cosmic crime of the Final Anunnaki King, the enforcement mechanism of the 13,000-year curse, and the urgent necessity of breaking the cycle before the Anunnaki's return. This entire journey leads us to the final, most profound and terrifying query. The final question, cliffhanger. If everything we have observed, the rise and fall of empires, the perpetual financial chains, the genetic limitations, the amnesia cycle, is not the random trajectory of evolution, but the output of a meticulously engineered control program, then we must confront the true nature of our current existence. If the curse, launched by the loyalist Anunnaki to punish the rogue king's ambition, has been running for 13 million years, then we are not living on a sovereign planet. We are living in a sophisticated, closed-loop simulation designed to run its course until the harvest. Think about the implications of this engineered reality. If our civilization is merely a quarantined environment, if our highest aspirations are merely subroutines that inevitably crash into the pre-programmed limitations of the curse, then every conflict, every scarcity crisis, and every political division is a predictable echo of the cosmic violation. The elite bloodlines are merely the system administrators, ensuring the program runs smoothly. The final question is existential. If our true history is a simulation created by a doomed king and later quarantined by his superiors, who are we truly fighting? The conventional answer is the visible enemy, the corrupt politicians, the predatory bankers, the warmongers. But if these are merely puppets, their actions predetermined by the curse's programming, then fighting them is like fighting shadows. It expends our valuable energy within the low-frequency trap, ensuring the system remains intact. The true fight is not against the people running the simulation, it is against the code itself. We are fighting an ancient, spiritual and genetic firewall. Breaking the cycle means fighting the programming of fear, division and scarcity within ourselves. It means achieving a singularity of consciousness that the Anunnaki never intended for us. A collective energetic resonance of truth and unity that fundamentally overloads the curse's suppression mechanism. The final terror of this knowledge is recognizing that the Anunnaki may not be returning to start something new, but to finish the original job. The Anunnaki's return might be the final system reboot, intended to permanently destroy the capacity for sovereignty that the rogue king awakened, however briefly, in his hybrid creation. Our failure to break the cycle means accepting our place as resources on a controlled planet, but the hope lies in the ambiguity of the forgotten knowledge. We hypothesized that the final Anunnaki king may have left a failsafe. If that failsafe exists, it is a piece of code that recognizes self-awareness and sovereignty. By collectively choosing truth, by exposing the deeper conspiracy, and by reclaiming our genetic birthright, we activate that failsafe. We turn the simulation against its programmers. The view from space shows a beautiful blue planet, but the esoteric view shows a vast 13-million-year-old prison. The only exit is awareness. This is the moment to choose whether you remain a programmed participant in the amnesia cycle, or whether you become a conscious force for sovereignty. The choice is yours, and the clock is ticking rapidly towards the Anunnaki's return. Now, I want you to look at the world around you one last time. If the May 13,000 year curse Oz is true, and we are fighting against the code of reality itself, what is the single most powerful action a collective of individuals can take right now to prove that we are conscious, sovereign beings and not just biological algorithms? Comment below with the phrase, "I break the code," and tell us your final strategy for human liberation. If you have stayed with me through this entire deep dive, wrestling with the implications of a 13-million-year-old quarantine on human potential, then you are part of the awakening humanity needs. This journey into the forbidden history of the final Anunnaki King. And the curse he unleashed is not for the faint of heart, but your commitment proves you are ready to break the cycle. Don't let this knowledge dissipate. Solidify your commitment to truth right now by doing 3 simple but crucial things. First, if you haven't already, smash that like button. It's the universal signal to the algorithm that this truth must be seen. Second, I want you to make a final declaration in the comments. If you believe that humanity can achieve sovereignty before the Anunnakis return, type the phrase, "sovereignty activated." This is our final collective counter-command against the curse. Third, and most importantly, if you want to continue receiving the research and insights necessary to navigate the deeper conspiracy and expose the elite bloodlines, you must subscribe and ring that notification bell. We are building the critical mass of awareness needed for true planetary liberation, and you are essential to that effort. And speaking of continuing the fight, the next step in dismantling the low-frequency trap is understanding exactly where the control began. Click on the video now appearing on your screen, where we delve into the shocking origins of the hidden global system, the true history of the Sumerian king lists and the first technologies they buried. Watch that video now and keep the revolution moving.